German authorities are strict. Their job is to protect the citizens of the European Union from imports that might harm us. The challenge we have is that we have to cope with this.
So let's get to the conversation where we see Frankfurt as the gateway to Europe's cargo and automotive logistics future. So as Europe's largest air cargo hub, Frankfurt Airport is a cornerstone of global trade and logistics. So let's discover how partnerships can take Frankfurt ahead in its ambitious goal of cargo master plan. So Joachim, welcome to the panel, and let's start with the simple things first, or at least try to break complex things into simple words. What is cargo partnerships? And if you may introduce yourself and just tell a bit more about the partnerships part.
Right, so thank you very much for having me on this, with this great audiences as well. My name is Joachim von Winning. I know it's a bit hard to pronounce for non-German speakers, but I listen to almost anything that starts with a J and then I'll answer. I've been with the airport now for 25 years, and the main business of an airport usually is to work with airlines, which are our main customers as an airport. But what we realized over a long time, and we had a strong cargo team for over 10 years now, is that we also need to engage with the other stakeholders in the supply chain, which are mainly the shippers, the freight forwarders, but also other airports. So when I returned to Frankfurt after a stint with the air cargo community in Frankfurt, which main goal is cooperation about the stakeholders of the air cargo industry in Frankfurt, we started to have my position as a partnership manager or the director for cargo partnerships in order to engage all the people on the supply chain that actually make the decisions how cargo is routed between different areas, between different airports. And so we started doing that. While Roland is still looking for the airlines, I look after the freight forwarders, the shippers, and also the other airports.
So any freight forwarders in the house and shippers, so they can directly reach out to Joachim about the partnerships.
So
that's very nice. So with 23 of Europe's top 25 freight forwarders based in Frankfurt Airport, how collaborative partnerships can enhance the airport's logistical capabilities and influence global trade flows?
As you said, it's 23 out of 25, so my goal is to have 25 out of 25. The two missing ones are actually smaller Chinese. Small Chinese means quite big freight forwarders. But the whole idea is that freight forwarders have a strong part of Frankfurt Airport. They have large handling facilities or their consolidation hubs on the airport premises, which means they are directly connected with the cargo handlers and also within the same customs area. So we can do custom clearances inside the warehouses of the freight forwarder. And the top 10 have the European consolidation hubs in Frankfurt, which means that all over Europe, cargo is collected, brought into Frankfurt, consolidated there, and hopefully most of it flown also out of Frankfurt, and the same is true for imports. And the partnership here means, on the one hand, we as the airport operator provide either land or even warehousing to the freight forwarders, so they can set up shop there and operate there, but at the same time, we facilitate the connections with the authorities, with the airlines, and also amongst each other to create a well-functioning, smooth experience for the shippers when they're using freight forwarders with their hubs in Frankfurt.
Right, amazing. So as you mentioned, the customs part, so Germans are known to have a very strict customs policy. So how can shippers from India or freight forwarders from India can approach you, and what is the right approach?
Right, I mean, yes, German authorities are strict. And as a citizen, I actually think that's a good thing, because their job is to protect the citizens of the European Union from imports that might harm us. So that's a good thing. The challenge we have is that we have to cope with this. And it actually works quite well. Even though they're strict, they're very cooperative. So we work very closely, especially with the customs office, but we also work closely with the veterinary office, the future sanctuary office, the federal office for imports of agricultural and foodstuff. So that cooperation ended up in setting up ways how to onboard new marketplace that want to start businesses in Frankfurt. One big thing, for instance, and I was just talking about this at the end of the lunch break, was how to set up e-commerce in Frankfurt. It was sort of known as being the forbidden city, more or less, for e-commerce, but 2 years ago we started with the customs office to set up a process, how do you do e-commerce in a way that actually complies with EU regulation. Because it is all EU regulation. It's not German regulation. It's EU regulation that you have to follow. So we have quite a lot of companies doing that now quite successfully, and I invite a lot of Indian companies to join your Asian friends in doing lots of business into Europe. And with that, you have a process that actually is compliant with EU regulation. So once other areas in Europe are more strict on enforcing the regulations, you'll be already prepared because it already runs smoothly in Frankfurt.
Amazing, amazing. Let's talk about the automotive sector and how these partnerships can benefit the automotive sector and enhance the overall automotive supply chain.
I mean, the automotive supply chain, usually air cargo is used when something else goes wrong in the normal supply chain. I once talked to a procurement manager from Daimler who said only no air cargo is good air cargo, but they're doing something like 40 or 60,000 tons a year, so it's substantial. And the partnerships here work, again, mainly with the freight forwarders, because they are the first point of contact with the shippers, the automotive companies, in both directions, between Europe, especially Germany, and India, especially Pune region. And our job here is to make the connections, also help them if there is something going wrong, if there is room for improvement, where we should talk to the authorities rather than individual companies going there. Because we are still a majority government-owned entity, although we are run like a private company. That means, well, our position towards the authority sometimes is easier to talk to them than if a freight forwarder goes there or a shipper goes there directly. We also work together with the shippers from Europe, from Frankfurt, or from Germany, in working with the government and how to more or less support us doing businesses with the countries we are friendly with, where we want to do trade with, and how to create processes, how to create legislation, or how to say how legislation are interpreted in a way that facilitates trade.
Right, right. Since you're talking about facilities and overall, we know there's a lot of automotive component shipment happening from the Frankfurt Airport. And so can you tell us about these specific facilities or innovations at the airport which can cater to the unique requirements of automotive component section?
I mean, Roland already mentioned that we have the Master Plan Cargo Hub, which looks at how to expand our facilities in order to have more capacity for freight forwarders and for all kinds of shipments. So that is actually not limited to automotive, but obviously automotive can profit from that quite well. So there are additional areas at the existing Cargo City South that we're developing that should add another around 50,000 square meters of handling space directly in the cargo cities where all the big freight forwarders are, like DAX, for instance, as just mentioning your silver partner, and obviously the other big ones as well, but also adding additional around 150,000 square meters of warehousing in what we call the Logistics Hub West, which is conveniently located right at the motorway that connects the northern parts of automotive industry around the Cologne area with Ford, with Toyota, with the Frankfurt area where we have Stellantis with the Opel brand, and obviously a lot of companies like Continental that are shipping components, but also imports from Kia and other manufacturers that had their headquarters in Frankfurt, down to the south where I'm originally from, to the Mannheim, then Stuttgart region with Daimler-Benz and Porsche, and in between you have Audi as well. So that is all our catchment area that can be easily reached with one return truck every day to feed those facilities.
Right, right. Yeah, can you expand a bit more on the Frankfurt Airport's proximity to these automotive hubs like Daimler, Bosch? How can it further enhance in terms of streamlining automotive supply chain operations across Europe?
What we already did was, well, about 10 years ago, we started our cargo community system, which is something now a lot of airports have. India's being a big driver as well for cargo community systems. When we started 10 years ago, it was actually only Amsterdam Schiphol that had one, and we were number 2 worldwide, more or less. And that already gives you the opportunity to streamline most of the processes. And we have a very good digital import process at the moment, where we have every step of the import process in the system that can be used by the freight forwarders or by the shippers to also streamline their processes and to see where each shipment is. And even that former black hole on the air side of an airport, we closed up with that system. And you also see the customs process as well. So that is a really, really smooth process for any supply chain, and you can see if something goes wrong and have countermeasures immediately when you see there's some sort of a bottleneck coming up. Also gives you the opportunity to have a look if there are actually bottlenecks. Usually there aren't. It's like one shipment goes wrong, everybody thinks there's a bottleneck. Yeah. If you can look at the whole data, the whole picture at the same time, with our cargo dashboard that we introduced this summer, then you'll always have an up-to-date information what the operational awareness is like. The same we are now preparing for the export process, which for the importers here is quite important to see where is my cargo on the way to the airport, what is the handling status, is it on time, will it reach the flight, and will it go out there as well. At the same time, it streamlines the long haulers, so that the HGVs, the lorry drivers, the truckers that truck components or parts from Stuttgart up to Frankfurt. They will save a lot of time with an already existing slots management system where everybody in the supply chain knows there are urgent stuff coming in and can be loaded in time. And that means also they can do a full tour to Frankfurt and back within one day with one driver running into legal problems with the drivers as well. And we also have, actually we have nice facilities for showers as well for the truck drivers there, so they have a good stay at Frankfurt Airport, and a strong network of truckers out of Frankfurt Airport that streamlines all the processes, including especially components and spare parts, which are very time sensitive.
Right. So in the earlier panel, we discussed about the truck drivers issue, which is not there in Frankfurt. And yeah, and this discussion again establishes Frankfurt's role or being the gateway to Europe cargo. So we can have some audience questions. Let's have.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rahul Bhalla from Kunenagel. My question to you was, we have seen in last couple of years, there are other countries like, UK, Sweden, Netherlands. They are also trying to build up their own gateway, right? So how do you see, is it a threat for Frankfurt? Frankfurt has been existing for many, many years. It has been a very strong product, which is being also used. We also use Frankfurt Gateway for our shipments into US. But of lately, we have also seen a lot of traction coming from gateways like Amsterdam, like London, like Stockholm. How do you see as a threat for Frankfurt?
I think the gateway function for freight forwarders will still be a very vital role, because that means you have massive logistic effects, starting with the hinterland traffic. So you will have full truckloads out of all your stations all over Europe into Frankfurt, which significantly reduces the cost of trucking per kilo. You have all the different flights. You can play much more with the block spaces you buy from the airlines in order to maximize the load factors, maximize how you can also support your customers with much more frequencies and much more capacity going out of Frankfurt to more places than more or less any other airport in Europe. So while you have strong gateways, also the big airports, like you mentioned London Heathrow, obviously is one of the big ones. Then you have Amsterdam Schiphol, and then you also have Paris Charles de Gaulle. And especially the three on the continent build the triangle of competition, more or less. And we are I'm happy with them. They have big freight forwarder hubs as well. I don't see any large freight forwarder hub in the sizes we have at those three airports developed somewhere in Central Europe. If you look at Stockholm, that does serve a different market, more or less. So people that would ship into Sweden wouldn't go through the Frankfurt Gateway. That's just too far to truck. So they will develop, but just serving the Nordics, not having that Central European role the other three big hubs, so Charles de Gaulle, Amsterdam, and us, will have. So from my point of view, especially with more push on sustainability and efficiency, the big freight forwarder hubs will always have a competitive advantage over smaller hubs at smaller airports.
So thank you, and we have an interesting panel coming up after this, which focuses on air cargo's role in the automotive supply chain sector.
Thank you.